need to leave so many American families vulnerable, and we do need to have protections against health insurance companies which too often discriminate against those who need protection the most. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President. Senator from Kansas is recognized. Mr. President, thank you. I'm a firm believer in the view that an individual can make a difference. I'm a firm believer that what happens in Washington, D.C. is important in the nation's history and what goes on in our country, but the reality is we change the world one person at a time, that individual is how we make life better. Earlier this week, on Tuesday morning, I was on the National Mall near the World War II Memorial, and I was there for the dedication of a plaque honoring an individual that made a tremendous difference in the lives of many and made a tremendous difference in the life of our nation. It was the moment in which a plaque was unveiled recognizing Senator Bob Dole for his contribution, in fact, his efforts and leadership in seeing that the World War II Memorial was built. And clear from those who spoke and from what I know of the subject, the World War II Memorial would not be available for us as a nation today in the absence of that individual, Bob Dole, who led the efforts. And there are many things in Bob Dole's career here in Washington, D.C. as a member of this body of the United States Senate that we can heap accolades upon him. But certainly one of the things that I know he is most proud of, and certainly one of the things that I and the American people are most grateful for, is his efforts to recognize the 16 million Americans who served their country in World War II. There are only about 2.5 million Americans who served in World War II now living, and we lose hundreds of them every day. Last week, I was at the World War II Memorial with Kansas World War II veterans welcoming an honor flight, telling World War II veterans from my home state, thank you for their service to our country. The World War II Memorial is a magnificent tribute to the sacrifice that many have made before us. I saw the World War II Memorial. It serves its purpose. I saw the World War II Memorial before it was ever dedicated, and I put my walking shoes on and walked down to the World War II Memorial a few days before the official ceremony back in 2004. And I saw the place that says Kansas, and I thought about Kansans. I thought of my own dad, who was a World War II veteran who served in northern Africa and up the boot hill of Italy. I tell this story because the World War II Memorial served its purpose. I walked away from the memorial, used my cell phone to call my dad back home in Plainville, Kansas, and from a son's point of view, fortunately got the answering machine at my home, at my parents' home, and conveyed the message to my dad, Dad, I'm at the World War II Memorial. I respect you. I thank you for your service, and I love you. It's something that sons don't often say to their parents, but it's something that we as Americans, something that the World War II Memorial brings out in us, not just to our parents, but to all World War II veterans. We respect you, we thank you for your service, and we love you. And we had the opportunity on Tuesday to pay tribute to a special World War II veteran, Bob Dole. And one of the things that Bob Dole's service to his country, certainly in the military, but here in the Senate, here as an American, was to take care of those who served with him, not only in World War II, but he has been the care and compassionate guide for all of us as we try to make certain that no military service goes unrewarded and that no commitment that was made to those who serve our country is forgotten. And so I'm here today to pay tribute really to all World War II veterans, to all our military men and women now serving, and to those veterans of other wars, but to especially pay tribute to Bob Dole, who recognized and continues to recognize throughout his life the value of service to country and the value of service to other veterans. That plaque is a special reminder that Bob Dole made it possible for all of us as Americans to pay tribute to that generation, and is a loving reminder for those who served that we are a grateful nation. It is important that we never forget those who gave us the opportunities to live the lives we live today. And Bob Dole's life, while there's many things in which we could congratulate and express our gratitude for, I hold him in highest esteem for his military service. 66 years ago today, April 14, 1945, young Bob Dole was wounded in northern Italy, and he lay on the field in blood and mud for 9 hours. He was rescued. He was returned to home. The people of his hometown raised money. I still remember the photograph of the cigar box in the drugstore in which people back in those difficult times put their dollars and their quarters and their pennies to raise money for Bob Dole's rehabilitation. And he was able to access the services in Battle Creek, Michigan, of a VA hospital. And amazingly to me, 3 senators, future senators who served in World War II ended up in that hospital at the same time. Our own colleague, Senator Inouye, our previous colleague, Senator Hart, and our previous colleague, Bob Dole, were all at the hospital at the same time recovering from their wounds in service to their country. So it is today that I recognize an aspect of Bob Dole's life. Most importantly, his willingness to sacrifice his life in service to his country as a member of the 10th Mountain Division, his courage and dedication, his ability to reteach himself, to relearn, to write, to bathe, to eat, to become a productive member of our society and to lead our country in so many ways. And I was honored to be present last Tuesday, 2 days ago, in which a grateful nation said, "We thank you for your efforts in recognizing other veterans in the creation, development, the efforts to see that the World War II Memorial, so long in waiting, is now on the National Mall." Tom Brokaw, the author of the book, The Greatest Generation, was the master of ceremonies on Tuesday, and he concluded his remarks on Tuesday morning by telling the story of Bob Dole raising money for the World War II Memorial. There are no public funds, no Treasury funds in the building of that memorial. Senator Dole and others raised the dollars from private sources to build the memorial. And he tells the story of Bob Dole going to California and meeting with a wealthy Hollywood mogul asking for money to build the World War II Memorial. And according to Tom Brokaw, the mogul said, I'm not interested, I have other priorities. And Bob Dole's response to the mogul, to the non-contributor, was, when I was 22, I had other priorities too. I went to war. Bob Dole went to war and served his country every day thereafter. And Senator Dole, in his remarks, concluded by saying, "I'm the most optimistic man in America today." We ought to be optimistic because we have folks, we have individuals like Bob Dole who have served our country. And today we recognize that service 66 years ago, April the 14th, 1945, in northern Italy. I yield the floor. I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Senator from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. President, I ask that the proceedings of the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, I rise once again today to continue the tradition started in the last Congress from our friend and colleague, Senator from Delaware, Senator Kaufman, to once again recognize another great federal employee. I think this particular recognition is critically important since last week this Congress came to the brink, unfortunately, of shutting down the federal government, which would have had a dramatic effect upon literally 800,000 federal employees, many of which toil tirelessly, oftentimes in the proverbial vineyards, trying to make sure that they serve the American people. It's my hope that later today the House and we in the Senate will pass what perhaps is a imperfect compromise, but as every compromise, it's a bit imperfect viewed from one side or another, that will continue the operations of this federal government through the balance of the fiscal year. So it is appropriate that today that we continue this tradition where we single out for recognition on the floor of the Senate one of the federal employees that continue to provide service to Americans. The exemplary federal worker that I'm referring to this week is Keith Pruitt. Mr. Pruitt is the Deputy Director and 27-year veteran of the United States Secret Service. Pruitt is responsible for overseeing the day-to-day operations of the Secret Service, including its 6,700 employees, with a budget of about $1.5 billion. Mr. Pruitt also oversees the protection of the President and the Vice President of the United States, as well as visiting heads of state. He has an impressive resume that includes handling security during 3 presidential campaigns, 2 White House details, and overseeing trips protecting American officials in more than 110 countries. Mr. Pruitt was first drawn to a life of public service when he was in high school in the 1960s in Memphis, Tennessee. He met a local Memphis police officer who had encouraged him to obey the city curfew and stay safe and stay out of trouble. Mr. Pruitt said this police officer inspired him to enter public service. Coincidentally, he went on to become a Memphis police officer following his graduation from college. In 1983, the Secret Service recruited Mr. Pruitt to serve as a special agent in the Memphis field office. Over the years, he rose through the ranks of the service. He has served both on the front lines and in supervisory positions, which all this experience has led him to his leadership role today. Mr. Pruitt is regarded by his peers as one of the best in the field. He has been described as a man of high value and honor who views each day as a training day and is extremely dedicated to his work and loyal to the people that work with him. One of his peers at the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Officers stated that Mr. Pruitt, quote, identifies challenges for the organization and seeks to change the status quo to make things better. His tireless efforts to improve the performance of the Secret Service have made him a true asset to the agency, to the President and the Vice President, and to our country. I hope that my colleagues will join me in honoring Keith Pruitt, a truly great civil servant, and all those in the United States Secret Service for their hard work and dedication to our nation. It's also my hope, Mr. President, that we can conclude the budget for the balance of this fiscal year so that we can give Mr. Pruitt and the countless other federal employees and literally the millions of other Americans who depend on the ongoing workings of this federal government the confidence they need and the respect they need by passing the balance of the continuing resolution for this year before we break for the Passover Easter recess. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Senator from Louisiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to vitiate any quorum call.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise today to explain why I'm voting no on the budget deal later this afternoon. First and foremost, I'm voting no because I don't think this is a meaningful, substantial start to getting our hands around what is the biggest threat and potential crisis we face as a nation, out-of-control spending and debt. $38 billion is, I suppose, more of a cut than we've ever done. But if you put it in any other context, it's very, very modest indeed. Take a look at the 8 days leading up to the announcement of this deal. In those 8 days alone, barely more than a week, we as a nation racked up $54 billion of brand new debt, way more than the $38 billion of cuts in just 8 days. That gives some perspective on exactly how modest and how limited in meaning this is. When you dig a little deeper to look at the details of the cuts, I'm afraid the picture gets even worse. A lot of these cuts are paper cuts only cuts on paper that don't have a meaningful impact in the real world. There's been significant reporting about this, the Justice Department fund, other examples. That probably accounts for $12 or $13 billion of the cuts. In addition, just yesterday, the CBO issued a report that said only 1% of those cuts, $350 or so million, would have an impact this fiscal year. All the rest is pushed off well into the future. So because of that, Mr. Chairman, I'm voting no. I think we need a much stronger start to getting our fiscal house in order. In addition, Mr. Chairman, I'm very concerned about what this budget deal continues to fund in terms of policy, in terms of impact on Americans' lives. And the clearest example of that for me is the continuing funding of Planned Parenthood. I just believe it's morally wrong to end an innocent human life. And I also believe it's morally reprehensible to take tax dollars of millions of pro-life Americans in order to fund organizations that do just that. Americans shouldn't be forced to subsidize abortions, much less fund our nation's largest abortion provider. And that's what Planned Parenthood is, pure and simple. Now, opponents of defunding Planned Parenthood have argued in the news and even on the Senate floor that the organization provides many vital health care services other than abortions, such as mammograms. Well, we've seen recently that that is a big fiction. Planned Parenthood's CEO repeated this assertion recently on news shows. She claimed, quote, if this bill ever becomes law, meaning the defunding of Planned Parenthood, quote, if this bill ever becomes law, millions of women in this country are going to lose their health care access, not to abortion services, to basic family planning, you know, mammograms. Well, as I said, in recent days, this has been shown to be a huge fiction. Live Action, which is a pro-life group, recorded calls in the last several days to 30 Planned Parenthood clinics in 27 states. In each conversation, a woman calls in and asks if she can schedule an appointment for a mammogram. And in each conversation, without exception, the Planned Parenthood representative tells her that they don't provide mammograms, period. One staffer admits, quote, we don't provide those services whatsoever, close quote. Another explains, quote, we actually don't have a mammogram machine at our clinics, close quote. The staffer at Planned Parenthood here in D.C., it was perhaps clearest. She said, quote, we do not provide mammograms. We don't deal with the health side of it so much. We're mostly a surgical facility, close quote. By the way, surgery means one thing, abortion. This Planned Parenthood staffer is exactly right. 98% of their services to pregnant women constitute abortions. 98%. This chart lays this out very clearly. This pie chart represents 2009 Planned Parenthood services to pregnant women. The universe of services to pregnant women, abortions is in dark red, 98%. Adoption referrals is in blue. I apologize if you can't see that. The sliver is that tiny. You have to be up close. And all other prenatal care is in green. And that's the reality of Planned Parenthood. We've also seen a recent onslaught of ads that claim Planned Parenthood is simply a leading provider of women's health services, but abortions count for roughly one-third of the $1 billion generated by its clinics. In fact, Planned Parenthood's own annual report acknowledges that it provides primary care to only 19,700 of its 3 million clients. So number of clients, 3 million. Those to whom it provided primary health care, 19,700. The provision to cut Title X funding for health services such as breast cancer screenings, HIV testing, counseling, other valuable family planning services would not block funding for those services at non-abortion providers. It would simply block funds from subsidizing America's largest abortion provider, and abortion is almost everything Planned Parenthood does. Furthermore, Medicaid spends $1.4 billion on family planning each year. Not $1 of those funds would be affected by this resolution and this proposal. So the question we face today is not if family planning and women's health services will be provided, but if instead we're going to use that as an excuse to fund the biggest abortion provider in the country, which does little else. Though I personally don't believe abortion is a right guaranteed by the Constitution, I recognize a sad reality that abortion on demand is right now legal in this country. But again, this debate isn't about that. It isn't about whether Planned Parenthood has the right to perform abortions, and it isn't about funding true health care services. The real question before us is whether millions of pro-life taxpayers have to fund this entity. Every year since 2000, the government has increased its funding of Planned Parenthood, on average $22.2 million per year. As a direct reflection of that, the number of abortions they perform has dramatically increased, even though the overall abortion rate, thank God, in the U.S. has declined until 2008. This chart lays out the situation clearly. What is in green represents government grants and contracts to Planned Parenthood. It has consistently gone up and up and up and up, a significant increase virtually every year. What is in red represents abortions by Planned Parenthood. Very interesting. Virtually the same slope of an increase, while at the same time, for this entire period until 2008, abortions nationwide were actually going down. Now, I don't understand how anyone could look at this and say there's not a connection, say that we're not using taxpayer dollars to promote and fund abortion. This notion that it's not used directly for abortion services is a convenient fiction because it's a shell game, because it in fact funds Planned Parenthood, and 98% of what they do is about abortion. According to their latest annual report, Planned Parenthood boasted more than $363 million in taxpayer funding. The same year, it performed an unprecedented 324,000 abortions. Planned Parenthood's abortion rate massively outpaces its adoption referrals in particular. In 2008, a woman entering a Planned Parenthood clinic was 134 times more likely to have an abortion than to be referred for an adoption. And in fact, this final chart shows that as Planned Parenthood's abortion rate steadily increased to that staggering number, 332,000 in 2009, its adoption referrals actually decreased to just 977 that same year. So again, abortions are in deep red. Adoption referrals are in blue. All other prenatal care is in green. What's the reality? What's the history? What are the facts? Abortions go up dramatically in Planned Parenthood. Prenatal services go down. Adoption services go down as abortions go up. Planned Parenthood has made a profit every year since 1987, including a $63.4 million return in 2009. There is no justification for subsidizing Planned Parenthood's profitable venture with taxpayer dollars, particularly when roughly half or more of those taxpayers deeply, deeply disagree with abortion. The sanctity of human life is a principle that Congress should proclaim at every opportunity, and the time has come to respect the wishes of so many millions of Americans who adamantly oppose using taxpayer dollars for abortions by denying all federal funding to this abortion machine. This is a social issue, of course. It's also a fiscal issue. Our federal budget is out of control. We're facing unsustainable debt. So given that in particular, isn't it time to stop funding an organization that millions of Americans have fundamental problems with? If our federal government has any hope of regaining fiscal restraint, we have to make significant cuts, more significant than are being proposed in the deal put forth today. I refuse to believe that Planned Parenthood is the one sacred cow that should stand untouched and be untouchable. The time has come to change this situation and to respect the wishes of the huge majority of Americans who, whether they're pro-life or pro-choice, think taxpayer dollars should not subsidize abortion, and that is clearly what is going on with Planned Parenthood. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, I yield back the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President.
The senator from California is recognized.
Thank you. I ask that the quorum quote be dismissed.
Without objection, so ordered.
I am so amazed that the lies that have been stated about Planned Parenthood on this floor have been repeated again and again. And you know, it gets pretty bad when you're so outrageous that Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart start to look at what you're saying on the Senate floor. That's a rarity. It all started when Senator Kyl took to the floor and said that 90% of what Planned Parenthood does is abortions. Well, that was a little bit wrong. 90% of what Planned Parenthood does is health care, no abortions. As a matter of fact, it's 97%. And every dollar of federal funds goes to health care and may not, since the 70s, not one slim dime can go toward abortion. Now, Senator Vitter upped this now and now says 98% of what Planned Parenthood does is abortion. I don't know what he's thinking. But let me reiterate, Planned Parenthood is a nonprofit organization. He says they make a profit. You could say anything. It doesn't make it true. And I think it's interesting that in the 60s and the 70s, Planned Parenthood, which has become the prime target of the right-wing Republicans, drew the support of prominent members of the GOP. Richard Nixon signed family planning legislation that authorized federal funding for groups like Planned Parenthood. Former Senator Barry Goldwater's wife, Peggy, was a founding member of Planned Parenthood in Arizona. And former President George Herbert Walker Bush, as a Republican congressman from Houston, spoke frequently on the House floor about the issue. Now, it's astounding how the right wing of the Republican Party has walked so far away from their most revered leaders. But that's their choice. But it is also our choice as to whether we're going to stand here and take it or come here and rebut what they're saying. So count me in, and count the Democratic women and many men on this side of the aisle who have stood sentry on this and told the truth about this. And the truth is, we're in a budget debate, Mr. President. Everything the Republicans said is, we've got to close the deficit gap. We've got to cut spending, cut spending, cut spending. And we said, okay, we'll join you, but where were you during George Bush's days? You never said a word, but put that aside. We'll meet you, because when we had the majority and Bill Clinton was president, we're the only ones that did get a balanced budget and 23 million jobs. We know how to do it, and of course we are going to work with our colleagues. We met them over 70% of the way on spending cuts, but guess what? They are so ideological and so extreme that what you heard from Senator Vitter today is not discussion about the budget deficit and the fact that we have to get on top of it and get that budget balanced like we did under the Clinton days, but you heard about abortion, 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 which has nothing to do with the issue at hand, because not one slim dime of federal money has been able to be used for abortion since the 70s. And 97% of what Planned Parenthood does is health care, not abortion. So we know what the real priority of the Republicans in Congress, we know the real priority, we know what it is. It's an ideological agenda that, frankly, put women's health and women's lives at risk. Here we had this huge debate over the budget. Tough. Getting down, we were all sweating it out within an hour of the day, of the moment that the government would shut down. And the two things that the Republicans insisted on voting on a budget bill, have nothing to do with the budget. Because for every dollar that Planned Parenthood gets to help them do cancer screening for women, pap smears, breast cancer screening, STDs, and they do for men as well, HIV/AIDS testing, blood pressure checks, diabetes checks, and they charge a sliding scale. You walk in there, you have no insurance, you have no money, you get the services for free. If you have some, you pay some. The bottom line is, this is what they're holding up this agreement over. And they forced us to vote on Planned Parenthood and, Mr. President, repealing health care reform. Now, what I say is, it's extraordinary, because we met them on the numbers, but in order to appease their right-wing agenda, they're forcing these votes. And if those votes were to pass, who gets hurt? Women and their families. I have some letters I've received from California, because 775,000 women are served by Planned Parenthood clinics in California. 775,000 women. That's actually more than some states have. And I'm going to share a letter. I've shared a few of them. I just got one today, Mr. President. Dear Senator Boxer, I don't write to you often because you already stand up and fight for everything I believe in. I heard you on NPR this morning talking about women's health and the cuts the Republicans want to make to Planned Parenthood. I'm a 42-year-old married professional. My husband and I aren't in the highest bracket, but our combined income puts us in $170,000 a year range. Frankly, we're happy, more than happy, to pay our fair share of taxes for the things that will help our society. We are appalled by the budget discussions. If you really want to cut spending, do so where it's really outrageous. Look at defense. Look at the military. There's 60% right there. But what has me outraged right now is the Republican Party willing to shut down the government over a few dollars for Planned Parenthood. If you really cared about limiting abortion, funding family planning is the first step. She says, when I was 20 years old, I was working my way through school. I was a sophomore in college with limited income, no parental support, no health insurance. The one thing I did have access to medically was Planned Parenthood. The services were on a sliding scale. So at my income of $850 a month, a gynecological exam was $10. That price meant I went. I also got my birth control pills there. However, the most significant crossroad in my life came about because of Planned Parenthood. My family has a history of female cancer, she says. I had a pap smear come back abnormal when I was 21. One, had it not been for Planned Parenthood, I would not have been able to afford the annual pap smear. Two, Planned Parenthood did a biopsy on the abnormality. Again, it was a sliding scale, and I don't remember how much it was, but it was something I could manage. Biopsy. Three, biopsy showed it was a potentially very dangerous precancerous growth that needed to be removed. Four, I did eat beans and rice for the next 2 months to pay my share for removing this growth. Five, I had to have pap smears twice a year for the next several years. Again, all I could afford was Planned Parenthood. Frankly, if it wasn't for Planned Parenthood, there's a pretty good chance I wouldn't be here today. So this fight, she writes, is not about abortion, it's about women's health. So I have to say, these are the letters I've been getting day after day after day. And I am very proud of the people that have stood up and told the truth to counter the lies that I've heard, frankly, from members of Congress. This woman's name is Heather Jones from Costa Mesa. The bottom line is, if you turn and look at the two votes we're going to have today, they both hurt women disproportionately. This isn't about budget. If it was about a budget, they'd give more money to Planned Parenthood, because for every dollar that they invest, we save $4 on the other side. What would have happened if Heather didn't find out that she had a dangerous precancerous growth? That would have gone forward. She would have gotten cancer. Lord knows what it would have cost. She didn't make any money at that time. She would have had to have help from her county. It would have cost taxpayers. She would have been ill, gone through hell and back fighting this, and who knows if she would have made it. Now, the second vote we're having has to do with rolling back health care reform, another attack on women. It's an attack on everyone, but I want to just look at what it does to women. Do you know, Mr. President, I know you know this, because you've been a leader in this issue. Before we passed our health reform law, being a woman was a pre-existing condition. If you were a victim of domestic violence and a woman, they wouldn't insure you. They'd say, you have a pre-existing condition. What's that? Well, your husband beat you, and guess what? He could do it again, so you're a high risk. Goodbye. And we said no. No, it can't happen. If you had a cesarean section and you tried to get insurance, they'd say, no, no, no. Since you had a cesarean section, you could have another one. It's too expensive. Bye. We said no. You can't do that. You can't turn away people simply because they were the victim of domestic violence or had a cesarean. You can't turn away a person because she's a woman. Now, in 2014, insurance companies will not be able to deny anyone coverage because of a pre-existing condition. Now, also, another issue you fought hard on, along with all of us, gender rating. Insurance companies charge women in California 40% more than men for similar coverage. Can you imagine? So when they say, let's repeal health reform, who are they hurting? Disproportionately, women. When they say no more funding for Planned Parenthood to continue their great work on basic health care, who are they hurting disproportionately? Women. Preventive care was a key in that health reform. And, Mr. President, I thank you. You serve on the appropriate committee that made that decision. And I will tell you right now, women delay or avoid getting preventive care. But once health reform goes into place, we know there will be preventive health care services like mammograms without a copay or a deductible. So when you repeal the health reform and everything we did for the people, who do you hurt? Women. And who's going to get sick more than any other group? Women. Maternity care. Maternity care is not covered by many insurance companies. We've changed all that. And by 2014, insurance will be required to cover maternity care services. And let's look at Medicare. We made many reforms in health reform dealing with Medicare. More than half of the people who depend on Medicare are women. 56% of Medicare recipients are women. So when you, as Mr. Ryan does in his so-called Ryan budget, where he ends Medicare, let's call it what it is, you're throwing women under the bus. This time it's elderly women. How proud are you of that, Mr. Ryan? Well, I'm not proud that that kind of proposal would come out, and it's starting here today when we vote to repeal health care reform. Health care reform extended the life of the Medicare Trust Fund by 12 years to 2037. Why on earth would the Republicans want to repeal a law that strengthens Medicare and makes it viable till 2037? Let me tell you what else would be repealed if they have their way today. Every senior on Medicare is going to get a free annual wellness exam. Let me repeat that. Every person on Medicare is going to get a free annual wellness exam, and it will get them access to preventive health services like vaccinations and cancer screenings with no copay and no deductible. Why did we do that? First and foremost, we did it because it's the right thing to do. But it saves money at the end of the day when we invest up front in prevention. That's why, Mr. President, the Congressional Budget Office said that our bill saves billions and billions and billions of dollars over time. Because investing in prevention, just like Planned Parenthood did with my constituent Heather, where a cancer was discovered early, means that an individual will get the care early, will get on top of this, and will not have to spend a lot of money on it, and will be spared the pain and suffering and all the rest that goes with cancer. So I'm here really to say, oh, wait, there's one more thing that they repeal. I didn't see this one. If they get their way today, Mr. President, they're not going to, seniors are not going to see that infamous donut hole that they fall into on their prescription drugs. They're not going to see that closed. In other words, right now what happens after you hit a certain amount of money for your prescription drugs, is it something, a couple of $1,000s, then they say Medicare prescription drug is not going to cover you. So you fall into that donut hole. We close that forever by 2020. They want to repeal that, so seniors are going to have to pay more for their prescription drugs. Now, we live in the greatest country in the world, and we have access to so many wonderful health advances, be they medical devices, be they prescription drugs. But what good does it do if all of a sudden you can't get those things? So by repealing health care reform, which our Republican friends want to do, and today we have a vote to do it, seniors, women, and their families will lose access to life-saving drugs. They'll lose access to preventive care. They'll lose access to fair insurance coverage. And again, disproportionately, it impacts women. It's just the way the demographics are. 56% of Medicare recipients are women. So let's be very clear, and let's send a strong message tonight, or whenever time it is that we vote on these two amendments. We are standing strong if we vote them down. We are standing strong for women. We are standing strong for their families. We are standing strong for Americans. And anyone that would take these important reforms away, anyone that would say, we don't care about the 3 million people who get their health care from Planned Parenthood, are saying that they don't care much about those people. By the way, there was some news program that said, what do you need Planned Parenthood for? You can go to Walgreens and get all those services. So somebody said, well, I never heard of getting a pap smear at Walgreens or, breast cancer screening. That doesn't come to mind. And so Walgreens actually had to put out a press release stating that they don't do those things. So let's start talking the truth on the floor. And the truth is, there's an ideological agenda around this place, and it's crystallizing. And my Republican friends have gone a bridge too far. People are catching on, because now it's starting to affect them. And they're Republicans, and they're independents, and they're Democrats. This is not about party. I can assure you, the people who are writing me, who go to Planned Parenthood to get their health care, their preventive care, their blood pressure checks, their diabetes checks, they come from every political party. And Planned Parenthood, in the beginning, and when it was formed, had the strongest support from Republicans. That's how it was. But these Republicans today have walked so far away from their own party that they are looking at a bill signed by Richard Nixon, voted for by George Herbert Walker Bush, and saying, no, 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 we're not interested in family planning. And they're distorting the debate. If people want fewer abortions, there's one place we can all walk together, and that is prevention of unwanted pregnancies, birth control, contraception. But they don't even want that. They don't even want that. And they've just overreached. And I'm a person who says, I respect you no matter what your views are. I would stand in front of a truck to protect your views, whatever they are. I don't tell people what to think about issues. I think they should be respected for what they decide. But big government shouldn't be telling people what to think about the most personal decisions. That isn't what America is about. We have, over the years, crafted some good compromises in the area of reproductive health care. We've said people have a right to choose in the early stages of a pregnancy. That's what the Supreme Court has said. It's been upheld since the 70s. In the beginning of her pregnancy, a woman and her family and her doctor and her God, that's who will be consulted, and up to her to make that decision early in the pregnancy. As the pregnancy moves on, the state has an interest in deciding this issue, as the pregnancy moves on, but always her life and health must be protected. That's the law. Not one penny of federal funds can be used for abortion except in the case of rape, incest, life of the mother. And I happen to be the one who carried that amendment on rape and incest, because before that, we didn't have that amendment. It was over in the House side many years ago. So we have a compromise. We have a compromise. And I would say to my friends, if you don't like that compromise, then come on the floor and make a woman a criminal and make a doctor a criminal, introduce your legislation, we'll fight it out, and the people will weigh in. And what the people will say is, compromise. That compromise is fair. It's not perfect, but it's fair. But no, that's not what they'll do, because they know if they said a woman is a criminal, it's a bridge too far. So what they try to do is vilify an organization that's been in place for how many years? What? 95 years, Planned Parenthood, 95 years. Vilify an organization. 97% of their work goes to basic health care and family planning. It's really sad. It's wrong. And I'm here to say, every time it comes up, the women, Democrats, we've already been on the floor. We're just going to continue this battle with our male friends, because nobody can tell me they care about women when they're about to vote to deny women basic health care. No one can tell me they care about families when they're about to deny families basic health care. No one can tell me they care about families when they repeal a law that outlaws gender discrimination, that outlaws the ability of insurance companies to turn you away if you were a victim of a domestic violence or had a cesarean section. Nobody can tell me you care about seniors when you embrace the Ryan budget that ends Medicare. No one can tell me you care about seniors when today you're going to have a vote to repeal health care reform that gives them more funding for their prescription drugs, that gives them free wellness checks without a copay or a deductible. We always say around here, whose side are you on? Are you on the side of the people, or are you on the side of the insurance companies? Are you on the side of the people, or are you more interested in scoring political, ideological points with the extreme wing of your party? Those are the questions. And I think the answer is going to come back tonight. I think we're going to defeat these two radical amendments. And I hope it will send a message to our House friends over there who are going to have a radical budget that the experts tell us are going to lose hundreds of thousands of jobs. Sorry. I correct myself. The experts tell us the Ryan budget would lead to the loss of 2.2 million jobs. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? The only beneficiary of that budget are billionaires and multimillionaires. So, listen, I'm happy to be in the Senate at this moment in history, because to me, these are the issues. These are the issues. And I have to say, these are the issues that I had in my campaign. And they were very direct. So I want to thank the people of California for sending me back here. We have 38 million people, the largest state in the union. Every time, you take away something from a Planned Parenthood or another health care center, you hurt more of my people than anybody else, because we're such a large state. Today, we start the votes. And I'm grateful that I could stand up here and speak out against both of these radical amendments. One, to defund an organization that's helping 3 million people a year in America. And second, repeal health care reform that does so much good. So much good. And I think we're going to win these votes. I certainly hope so. I thank you very much, Mr. President, and I yield the floor. President, I have 8 unanimous consent requests for committees to meet during today's session. They have the approval of the majority and minority leaders, and I ask unanimous consent that these requests be agreed to and be printed in the record.